fun to see so many familiar faces here. It makes me a little more comfortable. What's interesting is you moved into our Saviors. I have to tell you that from the age of 6 and 8 to 8, I lived on 5th Street South. My neighbor brought me to our Savior's Lutheran, which is now Good Shepherd, right? And I remember one particular incident. I was really mad at my family because my parents had an addiction and they were having a party and I was not happy one bit. So I marched over to the chair and to the church, and I grumbled to God about this. I do not like what's going on. And you know what? I still grumble every day. I was just not happy, but it was interesting that you moved it over here. 2 years ago, I was at Good Shepherd for a program, and I kind of sat there just reminiscing. I used to be in their little choir. Did anybody remember Reverend Rothnam, by any chance? Anybody attend? He was the pastor at the time. He was a Norwegian, and God bless him. But anyway, I'm going to tell you a nice story about a Norwegian, by the way. So when I was about 10 years old, I had an older brother. My mother put him in the Air Force, and then my younger brother. And I was brought out to Markham, my mother's sister, and they cared for us till I got married. And she taught me, thank goodness, she taught me cooking and cleaning and washing clothes and baking and everything I needed to know. Because down the road, when I married, 2 months before I married John, he had bought a home of 17 boarders. And I had worked for them about the year before. And the couple that owned the home had come from Brimson. And they had about 17 people that they brought with them. And they were basically woodsmen. And they had lived in these little tar paper shacks in the woods. They were jibbos. Some of you know what jibbos are. They did contracting, I think, cut wood for contractors. But anyway, and then my husband was talked into buying this place was because he was only child. And he lived across the road. They had a grade A farm, and he used to help the older couple do whatever they needed to do. He would bring them, take care of some of the people he had to bring to doctors or wherever they needed to go, shopping, whatever. And then the older couple decided that they would like to retire to go to Florida. So, and of course, I had wanted to go to college, but my husband said, "Have I got a job for you?" It was wonderful. It was wonderful. But then we were kids. We were young. So my in-laws, Sadie and John, they were the ones that did the general, they managers, let's put it that way. And John and I did grunt work. But we had to learn that too. We had to learn how to do grunt work. And so, but little by little, and we had a lot of people coming, more and more people. This couple from Brimson, they had bought this homestead, and then they also brought an old home from Brimson. So, and we were right on the they were right on the shore of Loon Lake. So it was a good place to go for Finns because they could fish, and they did a lot of fishing. We ate a lot of fish, believe me. But then we had so many people that wanted to come that we built a new home for 30, about a half mile up the road, and then we still had so many people that wanted to come. In those days, even the Arrowhead nursing home was not up yet, because I remember they asked my husband John if he wanted to manage it, but he didn't want to take on any more. And so it was, there just weren't places for people to go. And like even these lumbermen, woodsmen, when they got older, they had nowhere to go. A lot of them were single. Some were, they had lost their partner. And so, and then the old age assistance program is the one that took care of them as far as their money was concerned. So we, like I say, then we built the home for 30, and then my in-laws quit farming. At that time, taconite industry was coming in, and they were discouraging dairy. So that's a story in itself. But so they built the second building, and we had, all in all, we had about 60 people at the farm. And like I say, a lot of farm people came in, but pretty soon down the road, people, some of them wanted to live in the city. So we bought the Terrain Hotel on First Street South, and we had another 34 there. We had a lot of helpers and workers, but the four of us, we did the one-on-one with people. So you get to know a lot of people when you bring them to hospitals and doctors, and you're spending time with them. You get to hear their stories, and you get to know a little bit about who they are. And these are some of the stories that I will share with you. And then we also, in the 60s, they were shutting down a lot of the mental institutions, or like Faribault, Moose Lake, the county really wanted us to take in some of these developmentally disabled people, and if you didn't, they probably wouldn't, send anybody to your homes otherwise. So we did, and that was one of the best group of people that we dealt with them for 14 years besides. And the mixed population was very good. It worked out wonderfully. And so all in all, it was a wonderful experiment. When we built the homes, also, these people were a lot of fun. I'm telling you, they were lots of fun. We had to bring an old building from by the lake, and they put it down by the Loon Lake shore, about a quarter of a mile from the homes. Well, I don't know what the purpose was, but or how they came to this, but they used to call it the honeymoon shack, whatever that meant. Okay. And then what they would do is the fellows would make benches around the lake. I mean, I can still see it. They were very busy with that kind, and then the women would, we had a stove in there, and the women would make coffee, and then the cooks would send all the goodies down there. They would spend hours by the lake and down there, and those that could, a lot of them could walk, because it was only about a quarter of a mile down, and then and sometimes we had to bring them down there, but they had a lot of fun. Come Laskiainen, would you believe? They made a whip sled on the lake. And then they would give, the ones that could do it, would take rice. The average age of 60 people out there, I took an average age one day, it was 88. Wow. 88. Honest to God. Some of them could walk 10 miles a day. They could. Some of them did. Some of the fellows walked 10 miles a day. They had, I mean, these people moved. But anyway, that's how I came to know these people, and I could share with you probably a couple days. But anyway, I'm going to talk about Ella. Ella, one summer day, I noticed Ella was sitting out on in the shade by the building on a bench, and she was crying. I could see that she had been crying. Well, so I walked over and I thought maybe she was sick, but she said no. She said, it would have been my daughter's birthday today. And I said, Ella, I didn't know. She was a local person. I didn't know you had a daughter. Oh yeah, she said, but she died. Well, she proceeded to tell me that she belonged to, now my nose is running, hang on. Okay, anyway, I said, well, I thought you only had boys. And she said, no, I had a daughter. What happened is her husband was interested in that, when, you know, the Karelian fever, where there was a period of time when some of the immigrants were not really satisfied with America. When they had come, A lot of them, the best jobs were taken. The best land was taken. And I know for a fact that many times when they bought land, they were fooled into what they had. They didn't have what they expected. Maybe it was supposed to be farmland and somebody sold them swamp. That happened oftentimes. So some people were really unhappy, and it was all across the country. And Soviet Union was sending out people out to get these people to go to Karelia because they needed workers, and it was a paradise as far as these recruiters were concerned. And some really went along with that. Some were wiser. We had from Palo. There's still one family. One woman is at least maybe she's still there, I guess. But she went in the 30s also, and she could not come back. She came back in 1992. She was at the Wharton farm, and I visited some with her, and she had left in those 30s, and she was an interpreter for the Soviet Army. So they would not. Somebody with authority here would not let her come back until 1992. They let her come back. And I have pictures in the museum of her, articles of her on a big black boards, and it shows her crying when she saw her home after all those years. But anyway, Ella, she tried to talk her husband out of going to the Soviet Union, and he was determined he was going to do it. So she said, well, she said, they're going to take all our belongings. When they were piling it up, he said, no, they won't do that. No, they won't do that. Well, what she did is she put some money in a powder box. And she said she didn't tell her husband and that there was money. But they went along, and sure enough, when they got to the Russian, wherever they were supposed to be, it was Karelia. It was probably, but I think it was Petroslavosk, and I'm not sure if that's in the Karelia. Is it in South Karelia? No, it isn't. But Petroslavosk. Okay. Well, sure enough, they took the belongings. But they didn't take her powder box. Okay. So they're there for some time. Her husband goes to work in a lumber camp. He works from Monday through Friday or something like that, and he comes home on weekend. Their daughter disappeared. And she waited and waited her, hoping she'd come home. 2 years went by. Well, one day a stranger came to her door. She invited him in when she felt she could trust him, and then she gave him some coffee. She didn't say too much, but eventually it led to the missing daughter. And the man knew the daughter. He said, your daughter died 10 miles away from here 2 years ago. So when her husband came home that weekend, she told him that, she said, I'm going to go home. We're going to leave. And he said, well, how foolish. He said, we don't have no money. We haven't got no money to leave. And she said, well, you just trust me. Just trust me. You make up your mind. When you come home on Friday night, she said, you tell me whether you're coming or going, because I'm going anyway. I'm leaving. Well, he came home Friday and he said, I guess so. I guess I'm going to leave with you. She still didn't dare she would not tell him about her money at that point either. She said, I just kept it to myself and just said, just trust me. Well, they finally did get to the border of Finland, and she got out. They got out. And they lived in Palo for years. I didn't know. I even know the boys, but I didn't know that about her. But the daughter left and she died there, And there was several people from our area that did go to Karelian with this Karelian fever, but they never did return. And Stalin's purge, it was terrible. He killed a lot of people. But anyway, let's see what else have I got here. Okay, I was going to mention too another reason I was very comfortable with the lumberjacks is because my own father was a lumberjack. He was a woodsman, and I spent some time in the lumber camps up by Orr. My mother was a camp cook, but we were there in the summertime. Whatever they did, I don't know. He was a cat operator and stuff, but So again, with the loggers, I was very comfortable with the old fellows. I kind of knew a little bit about them because I had spent enough time there. I'm going to tell you a story about Gunder. Gunder was a Norwegian. And in 1960, he came to live with us. And he was from Tromsø, Norway. And that's Norwegian, on the Norwegian Sea, Norwegian Lapland, they would call it. Okay. Well, he was a bachelor. He was about 6'5", thin, very shy kind of a guy, nicest ever. That's the one thing I learned about Norwegian men. I don't know how many are here, but they were so polite and respectful. Always. It didn't matter how rascal they had been. They were just really nice. Gunder was like that. Gunder was a really, really nice guy. But like I say, he was kind of quiet. Well, he approached me one day as I walked into the yard, and he said, "Do you know anybody that could write Norwegian?" And I said, "Yeah, I could find you somebody, sure." So anyway, I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, you know, my sister is coming to visit me." He hadn't seen her for 60 years. So I said, "Oh, how exciting." He said, "No, no, can't come." I said, "Why not?" He said, "I have done nothing in my life." I said, "Gunder, you were a guide in Ely for 40 years, the best guide I bet that Ely ever had." I said, "If Dorothy Moulter and Sigurd Olsen came to see you often, I know you were the best guide that Ely ever had." No, he was bashful. He said, he showed me then where he wanted a picture. He picked his landscape, and then he picked my father-in-law's brand new Chrysler. Go figure. Well, sometimes later, this sweater comes in the mail. Handmade, hand-knit.
Oh my goodness.
Now, could you figure that 6-foot guy fitting in this sweater? And long, tall, long arms. I mean, my father-in-law was 150 pounds and 5'10". Fit him perfect. So he bought it from him, and now I own it. But isn't that something? Beautiful. They knit it, but she didn't come. But I felt so bad because so many times these people, and I see them at the museum all the time, they'll say, they don't think nothing of what they did. I said, everybody has work. Everybody. I personally think that we have a job to do. It doesn't matter how big or how small or, you know. Oh, and he said, why he said that is because he said, all of my family are educators. I said, so what? I said, you're the best guy he ever had, okay? So, okay, I pick up some Sigurd Olsen books, and sure enough, Gunder Graves is mentioned in those books. Okay? So I think to myself, see, Gunder, you were the best guy he ever had. About 4 years ago, I'm in Silver Bay, and I'm telling this story to my cousin and husband, and the husband says, well, let's go on the internet. Let's see what we can find about Gunder Graves. He died in 1967, okay? What's it? We're in 2000, okay? He looks it up, and sure enough, out pops a beautiful picture of Gunder Graves in a canoe with 2 big moose horns. And I said, you know what, Gunder, see, I told you, you're the best guy he ever had. In all these years, 50-some years, you're still in the news. Well, then I was on a bus trip last year to Daniel O'Donnell. Ooh. And we had 2 people from Brainerd there, women. When we went for lunch at Fitger's, I sat at their table, and I was amazed that there was another woman there whose grandfather had stayed with us, and I knew him too. But anyway, these 2 ladies, one of them had been a nurse in Duluth, taking training. She was well retired for many years. But she started talking about how many Finns there are around and on the range. She had been on the range. And she said, but she was Norwegian, but not many Norwegians. So I started to tell her this story. And the 9-year-old looks at me and she said, Gunder Graves? I know Gunder Graves. I said, and how do you know Gunder Graves? Because he was the best guide he ever had. No kidding. She said when the DNR guys decided they were going to go to the Boundary Waters, well, they made sure that Sigurd Olsen would get Gunder Graves to be the guide. Okay. And that was, who knows when that was, but it was really funny. And she said, I have a picture, and I haven't ever written to her, but she would have even had that picture for me. So when you think of, even Gunder, he didn't think anything of his job, and he didn't think he had ever acquired anything in his life. But it was important. He was the best guide he ever had. Think how much joy he gave for people. Think of the knowledge he gave. And why wouldn't he have the knowledge? He came from Tromsø, right on the Norwegian Sea. I mean, family of fishermen, probably. Yeah. He even showed me a picture of where the farm was, and it was up against some mountains, and they were kind of those rolling kind of mountains that you see in Lapland, I guess. Well, it was Lapland, actually, Norwegian Lapland. So, but he had a picture of the farm. But just think, he didn't want to see his sister of 60 years. He was so ashamed because he had done nothing in his life. I don't get it. But anyway, that happens. Okay, now I'm going to tell you about Gus. These are just funny things that happen. Gus was from Toimi, by Brimson there. And he and his brother and his sister had immigrated from Finland. And I'm not sure when that was. But there's a cemetery in Toimi named Hirsimaa, and it's next to their homestead in Toimi. And they had donated the land for the cemetery. Well, Gus had worked on the railroad, and John and I spent a lot of time with him in a car because he had throat cancer, and we had to transport him every now and then to the University of Minnesota. So, you do talk and you do learn a little bit about what they've done or anything. But he never mentioned the fact that he had a son in Finland, had a son in Finland, and a grandson, and a granddaughter. But never said a thing. Well, several years ago, I was singing with the Yetterman Bass Singers. I sang with them for about 15 years anyway, something like that. Well, we would travel to perform different concerts in Wisconsin, Michigan. We went to Toronto for FinFest, and we were all over. But when we were in Wisconsin or closer by, we would have the group from Virginia here, the Vihurit dancers, and then we would have what's the other group now? Yeah, we had the dancers, and then we had Vilma and Paulina from Finland. They were from the Sibelius Academy, and then there was us. So we had three separate groups giving programs, and we were in Wisconsin when I really had a chance to visit with Vilma. But again, we all sat together and didn't think too much about We just assumed that she was from Finland, they were from Finland, and they were masters of the Kandila relay. They were fabulous. Well, anyway, while waiting in a parade in Two Harbors, I sat with Vilma and Paulina. We were waiting, it was quite a while, and Vilma said, do you know where Toimi is? And I said, sure, I know where Toimi is. That road behind you right there, take it up to Big Noise, take a left, and blah, 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 So I said, what's going on? And she said, well, my stepfather asked me if I would go and take a picture of the grave of his grandfather. And I said, well, who is your grandfather? She said, Hirsimaa. I said, Gust. Her eyes got so big you wouldn't believe it. She looked at me, she took pictures, and you knew Gust Hirsimaa? I said, yeah, I took care of him. Yeah. So I told her the situation, and I said, I'll see you at Beaner's next week. I'll bring you his pictures. I'll bring you all about his family. In Brimson, I have a book on that, and I'll copy some things. And I was going to go with a big package, but then John and I couldn't go. She had given me her address in Finland, so I sent it. Okay. Well, now, sometime later in the summer, I'm at the Porthons over on Lake Oshkoshama and with Wally and Arlene Johnson. We had all been to Finland together earlier. And we were just gathering at the Porthons' home, and I related this story, and Wally looks at his wife and he said, well, Arlene, aren't you a Hirsima? Yep, she had two brothers there in Britson. So we're talking about the same guys now. We're talking about the same family. Well, here she knew who Vilma and Pauline were. The conversation had never come up, so. Well, anyway, Wally and Arlene then arranged a trip to Finland, and they found out they had 24 more relatives they didn't know about. And they went to this Tauno, the grandson. His father had died when he was 2 years old, Tauno, Gus's son, and he had been making hay, and there was a river close by, and he was sweating hot, so he jumped in the river, and he drowned. And so this boy was only 2. And I don't know how old the sister was, but she lived in Sweden. I knew nothing about that. Well, anyway, wouldn't you know, sometime later, now Wally and Arlene come with Tauno and his wife to my door. And he brings me 2 roses, 2 fruit roses. They're really special. And it was real interesting because then in the conversation, he showed me a gold watch, and he said, and look at, my grandfather gave me this gold watch. I said, yeah, I know about that gold watch. He said, how do you know about the gold watch? I said, because Penty Miller said that he had told your grandfather that you better send that to your grandson because Mayu will get it. Well, I didn't know who Mayu was. I kind of wondered about it, but sometime later, Mayu, there was a saloon there somewhere in the area, and people would run out of money. They'd borrow money, they'd pawn it, and then go backward. So Penty had told him, you better take and send that, because otherwise Mayu will get it. And so Tauno was really surprised, but he had a good visit with Wally and Arlene, and I just thought that was, never be afraid to ask somebody something. Converse with them, and you'll be surprised where in that world that goes. It's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. I've had so many of those experiences. I have them in the museum all the time. Okay, so, and of course, it was nice for Arlene too, because she found out all these different relatives, and she didn't know much about Tauno or Gus Hissiman. I never knew he had children or family. I just thought he was a bachelor. Okay, my other story here is about Helen. Helen came to live at our home after her husband had passed away. Her husband was John Stone, the founder of the Knights of Kalava. He organized that in 1898, I believe, and then the Ladies of Kalava, I think it was in 1904, and it was kind of a place where community could gather, Finns, and they could gather, and they learned, I think you basically teach people the culture, you keep the culture going. Isn't that kind of you? How many Kalavas are there here? There's a few. Okay. What else would you say they stand for? Basically just keeping the culture going, is it?
No.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And the immigrants had to have somewhere, and they were not, in those days there was a lot of drinking, and so this group was kind of like temperance. They wanted to stay away from that. They wanted family values. And this Kalava group kind of put in family values. Would you say that's what they do? I don't belong to it, but I support them a lot. Okay, well anyway, now Helen was a very quiet person. Yeah, a kind of a no-nonsense woman. Had a little class. Very, very nice. Well, one day she wanted me to go to her house. She lived on 10th Street. Well, after I left 5th Street, I moved to 10th Street, a block away from or a block and a half away from where Helen had lived. Well, I was young. She offered me anything I wanted in the house. Well, when you're young, you don't care for old tables and chairs. And you find it right now. Your kids, how many of you find your kids, you want to give them something, but they're not really interested. They want to do their own thing. Yeah. So we're all wondering how to get rid of all this stuff. But anyway, That happened with her, but she gave me John Stone's Skins on the Delaware, with his, he had written in it, and she gave me a creamer and sugar amethyst, which I still have, and then she gave me a coffee service silver, and I gave that to the Cullivas. I gave the book to the Cullivas in Virginia, and she gave me her white rose that she had brought in her trunk or suitcase or something from Finland years before, and that thing it's still growing right there in front of the Culliva Hall. They dedicated it, but it was Helen Stone's rose, that midsummer rose. It's white. It's a bushy rose. It kind of gets scraggly. You have to keep trimming it down because it wants to go wild every now and then, but I think of her often. We planted it at the homes, and I planted it in my yard too. But anyway, well, she had a son, Paul. Her and John had a son, Paul. His first wife had passed away. I don't remember if he had children. I couldn't find my Culliva book. I have one that explains all this, but I couldn't find it. At this age, you can lose things real quickly. Anyway. So one day, though, after she had passed away, I was looking for a vase in the. We had we owned building 1. They said, well, the vase is in top. It might be in building 2. You have that crawl space, and you throw everything you don't want. You throw it there because you don't know what to do with it. So I had to climb up about probably 4 feet, figured out to get underneath that crawl space, looking for that vase. Well, I did find the vase, but I noticed a suitcase there, and I'm thinking, well, now, whose suitcase would this be? So I felt very, very heavy, so I opened it up. Here it was all John Stone's important papers. Everything in there, and I just couldn't believe that it was there. Well, so I start back out of the basement. Well, there was a fellow standing there, when I was backing out, because I had these things in my hand, and I needed to get down, and should I lay it down and then pick it up or what? But I handed it to him, and I said, would you take these things for me, please, and then I'll jump down, Well, it was Paul Stone. Would you believe it? And I didn't know where I was going to write him or call him. I don't know if I even thought I had his address. The guy is right there waiting for it. How often could that happen? Tell me. I don't know.
Never.
I think of it so often, and I can still see him. Yeah, there he was. Here. Well, I told him, he said, well, I've come to look for my father's important papers. I said, you got them in your hand. And I said, if nobody had asked me about the vase, I couldn't have told him a thing. I wouldn't have known where it was. I wouldn't have even known where to look. Mm-hmm. I really wouldn't have. Because they usually took all their stuff with them, or somebody did, or a relative. And he must have, when he came for his mother's funeral, he didn't ask for it or notice it missing. Or I don't know. I don't know what happened. But isn't that crazy? Then the other one is Ida and Victor Holopainen. Holopainen. Reverend Victor Holopainen came to. I belong to the Palo Congregational Church, and I was confirmed through Victor Holopainen. I don't know, Doreen, you probably weren't yet, huh?
I remember him.
Yeah, you remember him and his wife. Victor Holopainen, he played the kantele, the Finnish instrument, harp-like, zither-like instrument, and his wife played the guitar. So they sang and played everywhere. But he came to Palo in 1937. My husband played for his services. He started at 16 years old. He had taken lessons from Helena Tomes here, and he started playing with Reverend Holopainen, and my husband played for 53 years at the church. But anyway, he knew Reverend Holopainen very, very well. And so we, and Mrs. Holopainen thought John should have married somebody with a little more class. I was a little ragged on the edges. Whatever, bless her anyway, because then I found out, I find out later, and I mentioned it later, that when he was from a family of aristocrats in Kitty, Finland, in Karelia, and he wasn't supposed to play the kantele. In fact, he got a beating because he played the kantele. His family goes all the way back to the very early Crusades, and they were barons, and they were landowners and barons, so they had strict rules. And Kalevala, you did not read the Kalevala, and you did not play the Kalevala instrument, but he snuck to the neighbors, and you tell a kid, don't do something, you know very well what they're going to do. They're going to be curious and find out why. They want to know why. Why did you say no? That's the way kids are. We've all been that, I think, maybe. But anyway, he was well known for his playing, and his wife, she had guitar skills, but she was also trained. Her father, I think, was a forester for the Tsar, but she also did fiber art, needlework, beautiful needlework. Their little house on Loon Lake was full of her needlework, beautiful, bobbin lace. In fact, when she worked there, or she was at that school, they wanted her to stay and teach. Eventually, she ended up sewing buttonholes on silk shirts for the president of Finland. She was very, very good. She had beaded dresses. She showed me. I didn't even know her. She had. And Victor, his father was a tailor, and he had a haberdashery. Well, anyway, his descendants maintained that as a young man he went to Germany for military training as a Jaeger to fight the Russians in the War of Independence. They were the White Guard, White Army. And records are lost, so there are no records that exist. But his Uncle Andy and his Uncle Henry were Jaegers. Uncle Henry was the one the other one was more of a bookkeeper, but Uncle Henry and Reverend Holopainen, Victor, they were rebels. They were into trouble all the time, bombing bridges, whatever, that kind of stuff. So people were always after them. I mean, they were kind of rough. But anyway, one day he came running home. He was already married to Ida, and she was expecting their child, Mauri. And he came through, and he said, "They're chasing me." So she put him under the mattress, and they were polite enough or respectful enough not to get her out of bed. So they let her stay in bed, and then when the coast was clear, he took and he shaved very closely, dressed like a woman, and they got out of Finland. They got into Finland, farther in safety. And for many years, he used to have in their driveway on Loon Lake, they used to have a wagon of some sort and 2 stuffed women in there. I never knew what that was. But it was a reminder of how they had been saved. Okay. But what happened is he accidentally shot an observer. Well, it took 10 years, but down the road, they eventually had to get him out of the country because he would have been killed otherwise, and they would have had to kill him. He knew too much. So he did. They told him, they were like the CIA, and they said, we'll give you the money and we'll give you a ticket. You can go to Canada or Australia. So he chose Canada. But his wife had to stay back, and that's when she worked for the president of Finland, and Mauri, her son Mauri, was with her. And but he stayed there, and then he was also, during those 10 years he was running that haberdashery, he also went to Baptist seminary. And because he was converted because of that, he killed that man and he told me that himself. He said, I was converted on the battlefield because he said I killed a man. And that's where he went into the seminary. That's when he met the Lord, and he decided to start, to work for him. And eventually they found their way to Palo. And they were so well liked, and he was liked by everybody. They had been to many different places. When he came to Palo, he came to the Palo Congregational Church. That was a free church movement, at that time. And what happened is he wanted to. Somebody came with their child. My cousin Vera actually came. My aunt Mamie and John. They came and wanted their daughter baptized. And because he was a Baptist, that was against what he had learned. So he couldn't do it. And there was others. So he turned congregational from there on. Some of his Baptist friends were not happy with him, but he said he had to. He said, I couldn't be without doing it. And I take care of our church books and stuff, pretty much in history and all the picture books and stuff. We have just lots of them of people that were confirmed by him. And the thing is, I think because I've been in that church since 13 years old, I was confirmed by him. But our area was flooded with communist thinking ideology people, lots. And they were bringing their children to be baptized and confirmed, which was a little unusual because they also belonged to some of their communist gatherings, and stuff. But then I found out later that in Finland, if you didn't get baptized and confirmed, you wouldn't probably get a job, and you wouldn't get married. You had to be confirmed and baptized. So maybe that was that thinking. I don't have no idea because I'm just guessing. But it's a possibility that happened, Because they used to tell me a lot of things, how life was like in Finland. I learned a lot of that stuff too. It was kind of interesting. But anyway, and some of those people have, from those families, with that ideology, philosophy, whatever you want to call it, they have been our best church leaders. They've come through, and he knew what he was doing. When he passed away, I knew that church and all its members and pretty much who's who in the communities, of all our surrounding communities, and 3/4 at least were of that persuasion there. And so in the end, he won the war. In his own way, he fought the Russians and he won the war. Because he was so kind to everybody. He didn't care who you were. It didn't matter. He was kind to everybody. He was criticized a lot. Other churches would say, well, you take in all these communist people, Well, that didn't matter. I've got plenty of them in my own family. My Uncle Bill, if I had to sing, I sang at funerals, a lot of them. If I sang, their idea was to distract. So he'd talk louder and, disrupt. And I'd sing a little louder. But I knew Uncle Bill. He was a good guy otherwise, And actually, he had one daughter, and she kind of did the same thing. She would distract. When her mother-in-law died, she talked the whole thing. But that's what they were supposed to do, distract, whatever. But anyway, he really did a lot of good work in our area. And he went all over. They went to different states, even wherever there was a Finnish gathering or Finnish any kind of things. We belonged to a conference with the Milwaukee and Chicago, and I got to know a lot of those people too because we were so involved with them all the time. But I have to tell you the best story of him then. Okay, so one afternoon my husband went to the church to see him, and Victor is in tears. And John looks, and there he had placed his violin against the trunk when he was loading the thing, but forgot the violin, so he jumps in the car, backs up, and his violin is in crumbles, shreds.
Ooh.
My husband got a nervous laugh and giggled, and he said, "It's not funny." It's not funny. It was an Antonio Stradivari.
Oh.
It's not funny. He had two other, what are they? Guarneri, what's the word? I wrote it here somewhere. And what he tried to do, and I've seen that, I saw a copy of that letter, the copy of it. He wrote to Henry Ford, and he wanted to sell that Stradivari so he could get a car for himself, because he didn't have a good car, and he worked in a very poor area. I mean, he got very little. He did a lot of funerals and weddings, so that kind of helped him, but he didn't get very much money. But what Henry Ford's answer was, he already had two Stradivarius. So that didn't do any good. Now, somebody just challenged me the other day. They said, well, that's $750,000. I said, but back in the 50s and 60s, it probably wasn't that much yet. It kind of, the worth grew a little later, But, okay. So anyway, let's see, I had a page here to give you little characteristics of Finns. Yeah, the character of the Finns that I recognized. Like I said, I told you about the Norwegians. Now, the Finns are a little different. They don't show emotion too much. And in fact, this one guy, he almost told his wife once that he loved her. That's kind of not a joke, really. It's just who they were, but they had strong character. They had a wonderful work ethic. I mean, under difficult conditions, terrible. They know how to have fun. Like I say, the honeymoon shack. I saw them have fun, how they were. They had a lot of fun. We used to, I don't know if I mentioned this, but in the spring, they always wanted smelt. And the cook said, no smelt unless you clean it. So we'd have these little circles on the lawn, and everybody had to come with a pair of scissors. But what was fun is when you sit back and listen to them, and they're talking about old days and being youth and stuff in Finland or wherever they came from, because we took care of Norwegians and Swedes and Danes and Slovenians, but of course when the Finns got together, they had their old jokes and sayings and all. And but anyway, and then like I said, they gave Vipukelka rights, loved to fish, and when they fished, they took the tails and the fins for bait. They didn't eat minnows, and worked beautiful. And we had, when we first had the homes, there was an awful lot of perch on Moon Lake, and that made wonderful fish stew. It was great. I don't see perch there anymore. I don't know, I see bass, but, I don't know. And they love to sing, and even when we had the terrain, if we had entertainment, we had a bigger living room there, they would dance and dance. They would love to dance. And some of them could do, some had a harder time depending on their abilities. But and then when we had the homes in the country too, if someone passed away, it didn't matter who it was, and a lot of times the county, I don't know what they did with them, but if we bought the lot, then they would provide the casket and everything else. They would pay for all of that. And we had to pay for the minister, but we would take carloads then. And I think it gave the people security. If they were, especially by themselves, they were bachelor, no family, it was kind of a security for the others. But I remember that, and then we'd go home and then to the buildings again, and then we'd have coffee and lunch like you would at any church or anything. And we have a lot of people that were buried in Palo, but at that time too, it was really funny because certain people that they said, why do you bring these people that are of communist persuasion to the church? They're not Christians. I said, so what? But you always get this negative thing. I don't care what you're doing. It doesn't matter. But that's all forgotten. Most people don't even know about it. And then the thing with the mixed population, with the developmentally disabled, they were wonderful with them, considering a lot of them had put them in institutions because they didn't know how to care for them. But they did beautiful. They worked out, and we were careful to match, like even at tables, people that, let's say somebody was a little, had harder skill eating or something, we had to figure out how we were going to do this and who would, work together better, and who would help, who would mentor so-and-so. It worked out really great. It was really a wonderful experience, and I think it was the best job I ever had in my whole life. I don't think I could have gotten any more education than I did taking with these people. Finnish people have loved to, when they had proverbs too, they would sing. I remember once walking in the kitchen and they were baking bread that day. We made our own bread. And this fellow walked up to the cook and he sang a little song that says, you're baking bread, and he said, I would like if you would give me some, And it's a little ditty that they sang in Finland. Yeah, and if you'll give it to me, okay? I tried teaching Kamrukavina. When you're in a situation, älä soa kun akka on järves pyllyllään. What does that mean? Don't pull the oars while your wife's rear end is sticking out of the water. Yeah, he did. Every time I test him to see if he knew it, I'd say, okay, now read, because he liked to talk Finn, So every now and then I test him to see if he really did understand that. Here's one I took out of a little calendar. It says, Kiitos kaunis kun nauris mut ei niin makea. Thanks, pretty as a turnip, but not so sweet. Then I learned one too. Kiitos niin suuri kun hevonen, mutta ei niin karvanen. Thank you so much, so big. A big thank you, but not so hairy and not so big, or not so hairy as a horse. Oh, it was fun. I mean, there's books and books and books of these proverbs, and that's the way they did a lot of stuff with proverbs. We heard those proverbs all the time. Then you try to repeat it back, Well, like a traveled road grows no grass. An ambitious spider has a large web. Let's see what else. Anyway, they were just a lot of fun. The Immigrant was a lot of fun, and I'm sure that when you look back at your grandparents and great-grandparents, they didn't talk much about their life. You didn't learn much about them, but then I was thinking, do we talk to our kids about what we did when we were young? I'm not sure. I don't know if my kids would want to hear it, because they said they don't want to hear from my mother. I don't know what that's about either. I got good kids. But anyway, so these are my little tales.
Thank you.
Okay.